A Year at the Movies, Take 2, Week 5. That's recording, that's recording, that's recording. Hello and welcome to A Year at the Movies with me, Jacob Earl. The show where I try and watch a movie every single day this year and then report back at the end of the week to you to see how I've done. I've done pretty good. Well, mixed. I watched a ton of short films this week, the first of which was called Dear Chantal, where are you? There we are. A Mexican couple made a short film of where they pretended to write letters to Chantal Akerman, mirroring her work, News from Home. I thought it was very pretty. I thought that the images are really cool. I always love to see pretty images, you know? As you can tell from this slipshod scattershot production here, I'm obsessed with the visual. I have been trying to make this video for a couple days. We're trying something a little bit new this week. We have two cameras, one that I trust and one that I don't, to see if I can do that. You know, we're already working with an externally recorded audio, so why not? Do I point in this camera the way that a villain does? Does it look like I am looking to the left instead of to the right? I actually have no idea. Am I in focus? I have no way of doing that. This one over here is the T3i, which someone left a comment about that I don't have in front of me, asking if I still use it, and I don't. I switched to the 80D a while ago, but long enough ago that the 80D is outdated. It's a good camera, I like it, but it's outdated technically, but it's more useful than this is, especially because I can't focus this. Do I want this to be zoomed out or zoomed in? I think that it should be zoomed in and then on my face, and then I'm talking like this, and, you know, it's dramatic, you know, so I can hide my edits. But hopefully I just talk through the show. This T3i actually wasn't working for a long time because it wouldn't stay recording. So what I did was I installed Magic Lantern on it, which was super useful because every time it stops recording randomly, the Magic Lantern software where it will restart that recording automatically, which is great. Okay, Dear Chantal, short film. Did I think it was successful? Yes, I thought it was well shot. I thought the concept was strong. I actually thought that the letters that they were writing, instead of writing letters back across the Atlantic, the premise of this is that Chantal Akerman was staying in their Airbnb or something, and they sort of gestured at a larger story with this location and also a larger like they read their half of the letters, not hers, because they are letters to Chantal. I thought that it's kind of a weird idea to imagine that a famous director who's been dead for a couple of years is staying in your Airbnb, and then you're like communicating back and forth. But beyond that, I thought it was a lot of fun. The next one, we are still on the first short film. Goodness gracious me. Antoine Milena is the second one. 2015. Basically just an exercise. Like, I'm not as familiar with, Sharon Lockhart's work. I'm sure probably there's some of it that's really good, but this was just like a short little exercise. It seemed like it was cool. It was it had a Steadicam thing that was really well done, but it wasn't successful to me as a standalone piece. Next, I watched Certain Women from 2016, a Kelly Reichardt picture. There's a whole bunch of stuff here. Let's see. There's a whole bunch of stories that are all together. Lily Gladstone. Lily Gladstone, who was in one of the ones from last week, The Killers of the Flower Moon, was also several years prior in Certain Women, this Kelly Reichardt picture. The theme, I think, this week is sort of, I don't know, short films, kind of. Like, I was going to watch a rather long movie, and I thought that I could compare how it felt to watch a very long movie with how it felt to watch a series of short movies. And Certain Women is a good sort of middle ground in that, because it's like a, what do you call it? Ensemble? Not ensemble. Like when there's a bunch of authors in a book. I have an example of that right here. Anthology. Certain Women is an anthology-style picture where there's a bunch of different, like, shorter stories all centered on one central figure that are placed next to each other and adapted from another series of, like, a book of short stories from a single author. Let's see. Laura Dern is one of them. Lily Gladstone is another. And Michelle Williams is the third one. I think there's only 3. Yes. I have often encountered movies that I would call short story collections. Like, things where it doesn't work as a piece. I have a list of them on Letterboxd. That's a good example of something I can call to mind. The Man Who Fell to Earth is one of those, or Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is an example of a short story collection where you follow a bunch of different characters, and they're all kind of meditating on a theme, but then they maybe don't all, like, come together at the end of it, you know? This is crazy, because I am checking to see if it's still recording, and I have to remember not to do that every single time. Alright. But I don't mean that Certain Women is a short story collection in a negative way. It is a collection of short stories. It does follow a bunch of different characters who, like, never really interact or very lightly interact, but it feels like it flows sort of narratively as it goes on. That doesn't really tell you anything about what happens in the movie. I mean, it's a Kelly Reichardt movie. Go watch every single one of Kelly Reichardt's movies. She's an amazing director. It's got Laura Dern in it. What else do you need to know? Like, it's good. It's a good movie. It was a different experience than watching a whole bunch of short films all in a row, because there was that connective tissue of being all directed by the same person and being not on the same theme, but on convergent themes and focusing on a particular place, because they're all basically centered around this one town. And so that was a very different feeling than the other short films that I've seen this week, where they all have their own little ideas going on throughout them. After that, I watched a short film from the Maysles brothers. They're the guys that did Grey Gardens, and and one of them did the, like, behind the scenes thing for the Wes Anderson movie about the boat. But this is from 1974. It's called Christo's Valley Curtain, where this landscape artist puts a big curtain across a valley, which I had never heard of before. I had never heard of this project. I've never heard of this this land artist. I've heard of the idea of like landscape artistry, not in the sense of like making a beautiful garden, but in like changing the face of the planet for fun. And it is a Christo's Valley Curtain is a very striking work. It is something that has a lot of, meat there that you could talk about. This guy strung a curtain, basically, just a big piece of fabric, like across a valley, like a real valley, not a very big valley as valleys go, but certainly more like a gorge. But it was sure as hell big enough that I was watching it like, that is a ton of fabric. And it all appears to be perfectly seamless. Like, I think a more interesting examination of this man's work would be, where does he get such a huge amount of seamless fabric? How long is the loom that they're making this fabric on? Maybe I just don't understand how fabric works. Because I thought you'd have to like make it in strips and then sew them together, but this seemed to be like one big piece of fabric. Like, there's all kinds of interesting artistic questions that are raised by this piece. But because it's a little Maysles Brothers documentary, it focuses on what happens and not so much about the documentarian asking them questions. Like, if there's a piece of information that the documentarians want revealed, they basically just hope that someone in the movie says it, right? Although the Maysles are a little bit more hands-on than like other documentarians, but that's such a nothing sentence. They're more hands-on than other documentarians, but they're also more hands-off in a certain way. I do like having a camera I could turn to. Having just like, having this and then turning to camera for an aside. That's fun. But yeah, Christo's Valley Curtain, it's on Criterion. I'd recommend to watch it. He puts a big orange curtain across a gorge or a valley. It's also raises a lot of questions about things like contemporary art, like who's the one doing the art. It's called Christo's Valley Curtain, but all of these like bridge engineers, these like guys who spend all their lives balancing on top of tensioned cables or whatever, are putting this damn thing up, who made the fabric, it seems like all Christo did was think, I'm going to put a big curtain across this valley, and that's where his like contribution ended. But I mean, I didn't think that. Isn't that enough? Is it enough to just think up something crazy and then just say it and then it's done? Does that make you the artist? I don't know. I had a lot of questions about it. I thought it was a very rich text. The next thing I watched was supposed to be why can I not remember the name of it? It's called Reese's favorite movie about the guy who walked across the desert. Friends with people in the Middle East. I was supposed to watch it this week, and I didn't. I have to find the name of it, or just imagine the name of it. It was fun, right? Whatever. What I watched instead, because it's surprisingly hard to block out 4 hours of your life to watch one movie, what I watched instead was Inland Empire, a David Lynch movie. because it was easier to block out 3 hours of my life, I guess, about Laura Dern and art. Like, it seemed to follow on the idea of someone doing something unlikely and large and expressing something artistically within themselves. Yeah, like big project movies is what I was thinking of this week. And when I was trying to think of movies to watch, I'd be like, what's a movie about a big project, about someone trying to get it done, you know? And Inland Empire is certainly one of those. It follows Laura Dern. I've suddenly started hearing myself saying and ah, so that's driving me nuts. Stars Laura Dern. Laura Dern's an actress in this. She's warned by a witch at the beginning, who says some cryptic stuff. People say cryptic stuff throughout it, and then it comes back around. It's David Lynch's first. The thing people talk about is that it's David Lynch's first movie that's shot entirely digitally, like on video, and that's cool. Except I thought it looked terrible, but it did feel very much like that sort. It's from 2006, really in the pocket for behind the scenes videos. And it looked like a DVD extra. It looked like an exceptionally long DVD extra, which is an interesting but like, it's about a production, right? Laura Dern's an actress. She's trying to act in this imaginary movie that's a remake of a movie that happened before, but a terrible tragedy happened. And in trying to do the work of making this movie, obviously, since it's a David Lynch movie, there are doubles and mistaken identities and reality fractures, and there's all kinds of cool shots. I found Inland Empire legitimately spooky. Like, I was hiding behind my notebook at times. And the texture of it as something that looks like it was shot on video added to that feeling of this being almost a document of something real that was happening, despite the fact that this couldn't happen. Like, there's no part of this that could happen, right? You don't, like, lose touch with reality and then slip into a different life, you know? I guess you could. But not the way that, you know, you do in a David Lynch movie where you just kind of go through the wrong door in a warehouse. I have a ton of notes on Inland Empire, so if you want to talk to me about Inland Empire, please do. And then, because I was feeling crazy, the next movie I watched was... The next movie... There's going to be an edit right here. The next movie I watched was Magic Mike. Because I needed something a little bit lighter, and I've been meaning to watch Magic Mike. It follows Channing Tatum as apparently a fairly true-to-life version of Channing Tatum's actual story, being a roofer in Nowheresville, Florida. What stuck out to me immediately was that the whole thing was piss yellow. Like, really so extremely yellow. Like, you know that, like, trope of the Mexico filter? You know, every time anybody on a TV show goes to Mexico, they have to put this really heavy filter on the footage just to show that, you know, Mexico's different. You know, it's lawless, it's dusty. Most of Mexico isn't exactly the same as Texas or, like, Arizona or, like, 1,000 other places where there's a desert, you know? It's just that there's slightly better food, right? But, like, you know, we've got to put a yellow filter on it so people know we're in somewhere else. We're not just, like, in the suburbs of Los Angeles putting a yellow filter on everything, you know, even though that's how that works. Anyway, really did not like Magic Mike. I'm going to, in the future, watch the rest of the Magic Mike movies, but Magic Mike was weirdly... how do I describe this? It was not as horny as I wanted it to be. For a movie about strippers, I wanted it to be hornier. Mostly it's just kind of like a drama about the American dream and starting a small business and how bad banks are. Like, it felt to me like, how do I say this without sounding like a conservative? Democrat propaganda? Maybe? Like, if you just do everything right and buckle down and whatever, and don't do drugs and stand up for your friends, then everything's gonna work out, you know? Which is just not true. Like, the solution to the Magic Mike's issue of being dominated by Matthew McConaughey is to unionize. Like, that is the solution to Magic Mike, is that Matthew McConaughey's yanking them all around, a slightly different version of this movie that I would have enjoyed more, and like trying to play them against each other and all that, but it never goes fully into that. It never fully, like, I don't know, bares its teeth into, like, labor organization as the solution to management problems, right? Like, it never quite goes there. It just kind of skates along the top of everything, which I just didn't like. Also, Olivia Munn plays a bisexual woman, polyamorous bisexual woman who's basically using Channing Tatum, and she's like the only, and her character is fantastic. If the whole movie was about Olivia Munn, I would have loved it so much more. But as it stands, she's just kind of like this conniving woman who, she's like the only queer person in the movie. A movie about male strippers. She's like the only queer person in it. And, like, she's obviously this big... She, like, creates problems, basically, and isn't faithful, sort of, and won't settle down. And I don't know, I just didn't like the idea of bisexual people as being sort of... conniving, backstabbing cheaters, you know? But what are you gonna do? Okay. Magic Mike. Didn't like it. I am gonna watch the sequels, though, because I'm just gonna do that. Let's see. Okay. Now here is how we have gotten to today being at a deficit of 0, because when I was supposed to record this on Saturday, I was at a deficit of -3. That's right. I was 3 movies ahead of watching a movie every single day this year on Saturday, and then my weekend kind of fell apart. I had other stuff I had to do. So, the way that I did that is that I went down to the movie theater and with my friend Sasha, and I watched all of the Oscar-nominated shorts in animation and live action, which is something. Now, if you're still watching this video, I commend you. You should apply for a National Medal of Honor. These just go on and on and on and on, and I really appreciate you sticking around. If you take anything away from this, it is that you do not have to watch the Oscar-nominated animated shorts this year. None of them are particularly good. Okay? They just aren't. The Oscar-nominated live-action shorts are good, mostly, and we'll get to them afterwards. But just so you know, the animated shorts, none of them are particularly good. Okay, especially one which was a... I'll get to it, but it's like a runner-up called Wild Summon, which I truly hated. Okay, let's start. First one, our uniform. Animated, our uniform. Let's see. It's a weak-hearted sort of discussion of the mandatory wearing of headscarves in Iran, where the girls in school all have to wear headscarves, but there's a little disclaimer at the beginning of it where it's like, oh, I'm not anti-headscarves, I'm anti it's this is just my experience. Like, not even fully being, in my opinion, brave enough to say something like, I don't think that things like that should be mandated, Like, it's silly. Now, I know I'm treading into careful water here. I would like to say that I am also not against headscarves sort of generally. I am against theocracy, right? If there is, you shouldn't have a national religion that decides the way that different people dress, right? Like, it would be like if we made every 15-year-old girl wear a flying nun outfit. Like, it would just be silly. Like, that's the uniform of nuns or particularly devout people or whatever, right? Like, it's just silly. Like, it creates a weird, all sorts of religion, in my experience mostly Christianity, but like when there is a sort of top-down religion that permeates every aspect of your life, especially as a child, it creates a lot of shame and secrecy that I, Jacob Earl, do not feel is personally super healthy for people. Like, shame and secrecy are where abuse lives, and I'm not pro, As far as, like, people wearing hijabs if they want, I don't care. Do whatever you want. Like, that makes you feel closer to God, it feels important to you and your family, that's fine, right? I don't care. But the government telling you have to do a particular thing, that's different, because that's the theocracy, right? Okay, we've been going on about this forever. None of this sort of complicated tone is conveyed in the animated short Our Uniform. It's basically like, from this woman's perspective, and it's like her story that she's telling you about having to wear a hijab in school growing up, and the sorts of things, like little facts about hijabs that I didn't know, like in her school when they were younger they were lighter colored, and then when they were older they were darker colored, which I didn't know and has some really troubling implications. But it doesn't come down on even the very moderate light side that I just did. It's just sort of like presents this thing. I didn't like that. I also didn't like that it looked like it was animated on top of fabric, but was clearly not really animated on top of fabric. I know that having every single frame be a different pair of jeans or whatever would be incredibly wasteful, but I feel like if you're gonna I always feel that if you are going to do something, you should do it all the way, right? But it was cool looking. Like, it was cool looking, but it wasn't, I don't know, there just wasn't as much of a full-throatedness that I wanted. Second one. We're gonna have a drink of coffee first. Second one. Letter to a Pig. Now, I want to go out on the record again on this one and say that I hate rotoscoping. I just hate it. I think that if you are going to animate someone, you should learn anatomy first. You should learn anatomy and perspective. And I understand that that's a ridiculous position to take as someone who is not an animator, and the extent to the things that I've animated is the opening to this series and a couple of things in Photoshop beforehand, but like the most like legitimate animating I've ever done is the opening to this series, which, as you saw, was very kind of janky, right? But I do not like rotoscoping. Letter to a Pig combines rotoscoping with like some kind of like stylizing the edges of it to kind of make it look like Kipper the dog, and other pieces where it's just like fully a piece of like film that they've just turned black and white that's like behind some drawings. That is sort of, that theoretically could be interesting, but I hated it. Didn't think it looked good. Also, the plot of the short. It's a story within a story within a story, where this Holocaust survivor is talking to a group of students about how when he was escaping from Nazis, it seems like, he hid in a pigsty and the pigs protected him and kept him alive. So as this is going on, he's Jewish, obviously, and he's talking about how he was like raised to hate pigs, and then they saved his life, and he was like, you know what? Actually, pigs, pretty cool. You know, because like which doesn't even make any sense, because I mean it probably makes sense to someone, but to me on the outside of this, I don't think you're raised to hate pigs. You just aren't allowed to eat them. You know, they're unclean, but unclean doesn't mean evil, I don't think. Maybe, I'm sure I'll be corrected, which is fine. I don't have an expertise in this particular field. But what happens in this short is that there is one child in the classroom who has like a pig's nose, right? Which makes sense. It's a cartoon. And as the story goes on, we switch from the perspective of the man telling the story to this child's perspective, and she shrinks into a version of the story that he just told. But it is about her and her classmates hunting down this sort of evil boar. Then they capture it, not a boar, like a wild pig, and then they capture it, and then they torture it, and then it turns into a piglet that's super cute. And this sort of relates to the thing that the old man is saying, where he's like, I used to hate pigs and then I love them. But it also kind of implies that the girl in the short is herself a pig, which, if we're like mapping this back onto the story of a Holocaust survivor, is insane, because like Nazi is not a race. So like it doesn't even make any sense to me. It doesn't make any sense to me. Now maybe I'm missing something obvious. If you watched these animated shorts and Letter to a Pig clicked for you, I would love some help here, because from my perspective, it seemed like it told a story and then told a completely opposite story that undercut the beauty of the first part of it. We're moving on to Pachyderm, from a French person. Pachyderm, which is it looks like, how do I describe this? It's a mix of 2D and 3D animation. The 2D animated parts looked good, because obviously 2D animation always, 100% of the time, looks better than 3D animation. And it is sort of looks like those, it kind of looks like, you know how when everyone's kitchens used to have roosters in them? It kind of looks like that. It kind of looks like farmhouse style kitchen illustrations. And it is about a little girl who goes to visit with her grandfather, and there is a strongly implied pattern of sexual assault throughout it. And I thought that the ways that it was... the ways that it told that were really good. I liked the way it doesn't start out with that piece of information, although I think that if you are going to watch that and that is something that you have experience with, you should know before you go in. That's why I'm telling you. If you're like, oh, I'm gonna watch this short and like something like this has happened to you, heads up. Okay? Heads up. Because it seems like it's kind of a cartoon about a little girl, but actually it's about, like, the ways that your memory can be changed and the details that you pick up on when you're calling back on something traumatic that happened to you. Which I thought was very well done. Like, the way that she tells the story, it has that sort of harsh frankness of the way that I really enjoy when people tell stories about their childhood, of like, this is what happened and that's what happened, you know. And there's also these, like, this implication thread, like, of the details that she chooses to pick up on, the size of the grandfather's hands, the breath. I thought that all that was really well done. I also thought it was basically ugly as sin, but, like, that's a matter of opinion. Yeah. Elephant tusk, when the ceiling turned into patterns. Okay. 95 Senses is the next one on the animated thing, by Jared and Joshua Hess, who are the husband and wife team who made Napoleon Dynamite and Nacho Libre. These are not like awkward cinema in the way that those are, but I was surprised that this was the one that I liked the most, and then I found out afterwards it was by the people who did Napoleon Dynamite. A movie I can honestly take or leave, but then probably should revisit. But they have a lot of experience in things. A bunch of these animated short films so far have been directed or created by people who this is their first, like, thing. They're, like, big enough thing. A lot of the live-action shorts that I'll talk about in a minute also are some of those people's first outings into filmmaking. Or at least, like, you know, short films and whatever, as opposed to commercials. And TV. 95 Senses. Animated. Animated in 5 little chunks. An anthology of inside of a short film, bringing back this sort of theme of playing with length. Animated all differently, not animated radically differently. I think that they could have been more different. I think that they could have been more... my friend Sasha actually brought this point up. They pointed out that it should have been more like... they didn't use this example, but more like a Ratatouille, you know, like when Ratatouille's having those, like, sensory experiences. Remy, his name's not Ratatouille, but was having those, like, sensory experiences, and they seem to align with the different ways that those senses are perceived. This was more like just 5 different approaches on the same theme. But it's a story with a twist in the center of it, about this inmate, famous Arkansas actor. It's not a real inmate. He's an actor. Very folksy. It seems at first like it's going to be a boomer, never used a cell phone thing, but then there's like a twist where he's an inmate, and that's where it got me. That one was my favorite of all of these animated ones. The next one was War is Over, which isn't what it's called. It's called War is Over, inspired by the music of John and Yoko. Now, I am, in my friend group, a Beatles defender. They're not my favorite band in the world, okay? but I do think that they are important sort of culturally, and as someone who was homeschooled and then made like a career-length project of trying to understand what people are like. If you want to understand what music is like, at a certain point, you've got to listen to the Beatles, right? Because it puts, and then look at the dates that different things came out, because it makes a lot of things, like, puts it into perspective. They're extremely influential, you know? Like, do I think that they should be making a movie about each one of the Beatles? No. No. They shouldn't be doing that. No. But they're going to, and I can't stop them. But War is Over. It looks like Klaus. You ever see Klaus? It's a Christmas movie on Netflix. It looks exactly like that. The War is Over, inspired by the music of John and Yoko, is written by Yoko Ono's son and directed by a fellow named Dave Mullins. I haven't been giving these all directors, but like I link every single movie I talk about. Every single movie I cover on purpose as opposed to reference. Whatever. If you look in the description, probably it'll be linked to my Letterboxd review of it, which you can just click on the title of the movie and then see who did it, because it's faster for me to copy my own Letterboxd. But it's fine. Animated by Weta and in Unreal Engine. It's a fictional sort of World War I looking thing. Really totally does not understand how carrier pigeons work. Like, this pigeon's going on like a circuit, whereas I thought that pigeons just went back and forth. Two soldiers on opposing sides have secretly been playing chess with each other the whole time, and they're not so different, and it's basically the Christmas football match that happened, but it isn't that. Like, it's very purposefully fictionalized in a way that is, maybe we were universalizing it, except it's clearly old-timey. They've got like World War I bolt action rifles, and they're using carrier pigeons. They're playing chess, for God's sake. Chess is what's that Elon Musk quote where he's like, I solved chess, there wasn't enough technology trees or whatever. Absolute fucking idiot, that guy. I'm getting off track. Not how carrier pigeons work. Heads up, the bird dies. They dropped the title of the song, the title of the short, not the title of the short, but like, so this is Christmas, like that. And what have you done? I'm not a good singer. They drop it at the end, and it's cheese ball, and it's like, consider peace, in a way that like only people who have never had anything actually bad ever happen to them could do. Like, it's like a consider peace message for like a 15-year-old, and it's like, yeah, what about peace? And then when you actually like encounter other people in the world, peace becomes extremely difficult. Like, there's no clear reason why this battle is going on. Like, there's no clear like ideological difference between these two sides, other than like one's kind of long and stretched out looking and the other one's kind of squat and round, like there's no point to this war. And it's like, yeah, there is no point to war, but like that's not how real wars work, right? Whatever. We shouldn't be fighting them. I agree, we should consider peace. Next. Now, these two were like runners-up. These are the first two runners-up. The first one is Wild Summon. Now, you would think that I just said Wild Salmon. I have not. I have not just said Wild Salmon. It is so ugly. It is so ugly. It's produced by Netflix, and it, like War is Over inspired by the music of John and Yoko. It has a trite, childish message of like, consider the salmon. That's true, but it doesn't mean anything. Like, it's like, oh, our waterways are being polluted and the salmon can't swim through them. That's true, but what do you think this short is going to do? Now, the whole time, I'd like to point out there are no salmon in this movie about salmon fisheries. Like, the voiceover tells you that there are salmon in there, but there are not. You know what there are? Little, weirdly wet-looking, wobbly, like, exaggerated feature people, like animated people who are, like, in swimsuits where their eyes have old-timey, like, swimming goggles on them, and they have swimming fins, but they don't have any breathing apparatus, and they are the salmon, but then the salmon are, like, personified people. And what it looked like to me was when you accidentally see some, what's the phrase, safe for work fetish content, like, being really small or inflation or whatever. Like, you see these things where it's clearly someone's, like, deal. And that's fine. I am not here to tell people that they shouldn't have a deal. I am saying that it shouldn't be presented as, like, there's just something about it where it's, like, self-congratulatory, the worst kind of vegan thing, right? Where, like, it's like, oh, well, you shouldn't eat salmon. Okay, but do we want to not eat salmon because they're, like at one point it's like, oh, salmon fisheries or salmon farms are destroying the salmon's lives. Well, sort of, yeah, but if you're arguing that the salmon are dying out because the rivers are polluted and drying up and they can't get back to their spawning locations, which are all true facts, then wouldn't keeping salmon alive in a self-contained system of some way be actually beneficial for them? Whatever. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. Maybe it makes sense to someone. It was ugly, it was overlong, it was condescending, and it was just made me feel so goddamn gross and unpleasant and bad. And I didn't have to, because it was a runner-up. Like, if you're the sort of person who views the Oscars as a sport, you don't, which I'm not the sort of person who has to watch every single Oscars movie every year. I have done that, but it's a lot of work. I didn't have to watch this, because it was a runner-up. Anyway, the next thing is a short called I'm Hip, where a beatnik top cat tells you about how hip he is. It's the sort of thing that you would see. It felt very much like something that would play before a Pixar movie. I thought it was cute. I thought it was well done. I thought it was the thinnest of any of these things, where, like, the sort of message pieces that I've been complaining about this whole time, at least they had a message to them, you know? And also, this is another runner-up. But one interesting fact about I'm Hip, I found out afterwards in researching this piece, because I did do a little bit of research. I want to write down the names of all the directors on my little piece of paper. It was made by John Musker of Musker and Clements, which he's the guy who, among other things, directed Treasure Planet, which is one of my favorites. So, like, that's kind of fun, you know? That's kind of fun. And now the Oscars live-action ones. Okay, first one. The After, UK. Dancing with the Business Dad, Danger. It's an after-school PSA about knife danger. Now, the UK is currently suffering from a spate of, like, they're calling them, like, knife attacks, but, like, people are getting attacked with what looked to me like machetes. and they have like some kind of crazy name, like dragon knives or something. I can't remember what it's called, but they're these like, they look like machetes that got a serrated back on them. I was under the impression that you couldn't have a knife longer than like 3 inches or something in England, and especially one that didn't lock. Especially we had to have like a folding knife that didn't lock. And so maybe these are getting around it because they're technically like machetes for landscaping or something. I have no idea how this problem keeps perpetuating. Not an expert in any of these things. But it is a serious problem, and people are being attacked with what they're calling knives and what I would call machetes, right? And so in this story, this dad, played by a guy with a name, Oyelowo, Daniel Oyelowo, the actor who's the voice of Agent Kallus in Star Wars Rebels, Oyelowo, I think it's Daniel or David Oyelowo. A lot of vowels in there, and I can't remember if it's Daniel or David, but Oyelowo and the guy who plays Agent Kallus. He's doing a good job acting. I thought it was poorly directed. I thought it was poorly edited, and I thought that it was poorly thought out. There was a lot of parts to it. I think that it could have been expanded into something more interesting, but it just did not feel like it had a point. Like, other than like something bad happens to you and you soldier on, you know, and it's like, alright, sure. But he like soldiers on alone. Like, I wrote down cowboy. Like, he stops going to therapy. He isolates himself from his friends. Like, he gets out of that a little bit by driving for Uber, and then like some random girl who's basically would have been his daughter's age gives him a hug and is like, hey, yeah, it'll be okay, and he just breaks down crying. Like, don't be like that. Like, don't isolate yourself. Don't avoid your friends and your like the only way to heal from trauma is through human connection, and I think they try and gesture at that, but I don't think that they hit it. The second one, red, white, and blue. Red, white, and blue. Red, white, and blue. It's got a comma in there somewhere. This one is about how important it is to have access to abortion care. That's pretty clear throughout it. This one has a twist I won't spoil, but it's not hidden. It's fairly obvious. It's about a woman who wants to get an abortion, but she lives in Arkansas. Now, Arkansas looks a lot like the diner next to the Academy of the Arts building. Like, there's or not the Academy of the Arts, but like there's where the Oscars are actually held. There's like a diner near there, and there's only like 3 diners in Los Angeles or something. That's an overstatement, but like good, like classic looking middle America, like how you think of middle America diners. And I saw at the end that it was a place that I believe I have actually been to, which is, I thought, funny. But it doesn't look like Arkansas to me. That's fine. It's mostly interiors. There isn't a lot of like sense of place in it. It just seems like it was shot in LA because it was shot in LA. But it is about this woman who wants an abortion. She has to get a ton of money together. She has to travel a long distance, and then, like, even then, it's uncertain. I thought it was pretty well done. I thought that it had a good twist in it. I thought that it had a message that is meaningful, you know, that people can get behind. And as I passed by one of these message things, just like, as I'm going by, abortions should be legal, at the very least, everywhere. They were a couple of years ago, and then, like, something happened. I wonder what it was. Global rise of fascism. Anyway, Arkansas looks like a Denny's almost. Yeah, down near the Academy. Googles how to get an abortion. Goes on a long trip it seems like the sort of thing that was shot by people who mostly do either sitcoms or commercials. Like, it did not feel especially artistic to me. Like with a lot of these, it felt kind of like, how do I describe that? Overt, I guess. There wasn't a huge amount of subtlety to it. But it was something that everybody can get behind. It was a thing that I think could win an award somewhere, and has made it all the way to this. And yeah, interesting to see where this director, Nazreen Chaudhuri, does, next. I think that this is a very strong little short. After this, I watched my favorite one, Night of Fortune, which is a Danish movie, a Danish short, also by someone who doesn't seem to have ever done anything before, about just exactly like if someone was writing down a joke about a kind of movie that I would like. This is a movie about an old man who has to deal with an incredibly strong feeling of loss and isolation while living in Scandinavia and being alone, right? Like, it was exactly the kind of thing that someone would write down and be like, oh, probably Jake would like this, and I did like it. I thought it was really funny. It's kind of a strange way to say that. It's really funny. It was really funny. It was like Scandinavian dark humor kind of thing. About this guy who loses his wife, and they're old, and he feels bad. And he's just hanging out at the morgue or something. And he's not just hanging out there. He's supposed to be saying goodbye to his wife, but he can't manage to do it. And so he talks to he is talked to by a bunch of different people in the building, and sort of samples other people's experiences of grief against his will, and I thought it was hilarious. Honestly, I thought it was hilarious. And then another one that's super sad, but then isn't funny at all, a short called Invincible by some Canadians, some French Canadians. About this kid who goes to, I don't even know what it is, some kind of juvie maybe. Like, it's not clear to me, but they like lock him up in a room, and he has a family on the outside, and he can't get to them, and he also can't express his feelings, and it comes out in violence. I mean, I think he must be in some kind of juvie. But yeah, like, it straight up seemed like an illegal situation. Like, it seemed like something that this place should not exist, like, it just should not exist. It should be a different thing, where you aren't locking kids up and isolating them from their families and keeping them from their lives, no matter how, I don't know. I mean, like, it was not helping him. Like, it was not helping him become less violent and weird, or open up more or whatever, to be locked in a room with no air conditioning, with a window that doesn't open. Like, it was just awful. Like, it was truly awful. I thought that it was very well done, though. Like, as a short film, what I am thinking about isn't so much like, oh, I thought that part was really pretty, or oh, I thought that was really well done. I was thinking, wow, I hope that this guy makes it out of it, Like, I was in the story of it. And apparently it's based off of a real-ish life story of someone that the person knew. Yeah, but I really liked that. I thought it was a cool little short. Invincible by some French Canadians. And then the last one, and the last thing I'm going to talk about today, I know, this video has gone on forever. Hopefully I've been able to edit it down by hiding some of the edits in this, these like sort of cutaway shots here, but probably not. Probably I'm just cutting to these when it's fun. Who knows? We're just going on and on and on and on and on and on and on. Last one is Henry Sugar, the Wes Anderson short. Something that I had already seen. Because it came out on Netflix. I think that if you are going to have a short film and then it's going to be an Oscar contention, having it come out on Netflix is very helpful. But Henry Sugar, it's from a Roald Dahl story. It's about Benedict Cumberbatch, that's his name, who plays Henry Sugar, a guy who trains himself to have psychic powers and cheat at cards, which is fun. Like someone who learns about enlightenment and pursues it only to the extent of personal gain, and how that changes you along the way. Very fun. I don't think that it is fair to put Henry Sugar in contention with these other shorts, because Henry Sugar is one part of an anthology that was put out on Netflix. Like there's like 4 other shorts in this series, and they're all from the same director and they're all the same idea. Like it's like putting in the first like 25 minutes of Certain Women, just the Laura Dern part, in for Oscar contention. Like it doesn't work. I don't think that that's right, personally. And also, Wes Anderson is working at a whole different level of both production design and budget. Like he is clearly putting like a production level budget. Like he's putting a feature film length budget into each one of these little shorts. Like there's flats and there's hand painted scenery and there's like whole buildings that it turns out don't exist, and all kinds of stuff, like visual storytelling tricks that are usually only possible in like written literature, that here are being done extremely effectively in visual media. I thought it, as far as like production design and effort, blew every single one of these other live action shorts out of the water. But I think that Night of Fortune should win the Oscar for best short film, best live action short film. Because it just does not seem fair to have somebody who can blow $6 million on the drop of a hat have his short entered into this competition against people who are like, it's their first short, or like they clearly are working in television and commercials and they're trying to do something a little bit more narrative and not strictly succeeding. But it's cool to see people who are trying and doing stuff, and wow, it's their first thing and they made it all the way here, and then to just be in the same category as Wes Anderson, it doesn't seem right to me. But yeah, Henry Sugar's fantastic. Okay, that's it for this week's show. Thank you so much for sticking with me. Now I'm going to try and edit this monster of a video on my 14-year-old laptop. Thank you so much for sticking with me to the end of this. I'm sorry this video is late. I am doing this for fun. I find talking to a camera fun. And I think that having little like cutaway jokes or whatever it's fun. So thank you for sticking with me to the end. Yeah, that's the end of this episode. Do I have something that I say at the end of them? This week's show has been brought to you by viewers like you over on our Patreon, patreon.com/JacobDavidEarl. It's linked in the description. If you want to see a link to any of the movies that I talked about this week, not to watch them, but just like to know what they are, that's unnecessary. That's unnecessary. specification there. If you'd like to see a link to any of the movies that I talked about this week, it's in the description. Look in the description. And if you enjoy the show, leave a comment. I don't know. Tell your friends. For Early Bird Industries, I have been Jacob Earl, and this has been A Year at the Movies, Week 5. Good night.